Oh, yeah. So my friend and my client, Nick Pollard, is here virtually in the studio today. Mm-hmm. Nick is known as the people displeaser. What the heck is
that? The moniker, so to speak, came from a friend of mine. I'd started my TikTok channel was really where I got started about 2.5 or 3 years ago. And my friend Marcus had said that my content was displeasing because I gave the thumbs up at the end and kind of a sarcastic, like, F you. So I changed my name just to have a chuckle to the people displeaser on Instagram and TikTok and all those places because he was watching. And it was really he and I were the only one that was watching my content at that point anyway. And so it was kind of it's a nod to my first coaching client, Marcus, who's now a friend of mine. And it's turned out to be, relatively true as I've kind of built this work around the idea of what is people pleasing and how do you overcome it.
So you have a few more viewers on TikTok now. The biggest video has gotten how many views? I
just did one. It's interesting you should ask. I think that the one that has the most views ever was 4 million.
Great.
But the one I just did actually over the weekend has 1.8 million on TikTok, 5 million on Facebook, and 750,000 on Instagram.
So proving it's no fluke. Now, I want to set the stage for this correctly. I want to frame this correctly because
sure.
We met, we'll get to that. You're a client of our agency, Copy Crew.
Yes.
We've been writing copy for you.
Yes.
And when you and I first talked, I saw your content. I checked it out. For some people, it's a little rough. I like it because it's straightforward. It's honest. It's sometimes brutal, but I tell my clients sometimes, I need to be brutally compassionate. Is that okay with you?
Right.
So I think there's a good place for that in love to just be brutal and say, look, this is how it is.
Right.
So I love that about you, this whole thing, not really knowing the quote, internet marketing game, if you will.
Right.
Like you're not one of these people who's been trying to make it work for years and years and years. You just came in, got successful on TikTok and social and decide you're going to do something in terms of a business online. And you've hit a triple grand slam right out of the gate.
Right. I mean, I don't know if it was right out of the gate. We'll say it was closer to the gate than most people get, I think.
Well, tell the story of how you get started and how did we meet?
So we got started. I mean, my story started 2 years ago. And what had happened was I had a couple of videos that did really well toward the beginning of the year. They kind of propelled me into, kind of a stratospheric rise through Instagram. Well, that had caused John Acuff, a mutual friend, to follow me. And that was just interesting. And there was nothing to it. But then I started to get publishing offers and real ones, not like, somebody reaching out to me and saying, hey, I can write a 15,000 page book for you in, 15 days or less, and you'll have something to publish. It's like a real one, like a publishing company had reached out and said, we're interested in talking to you about a book. I was interested in that. I was like, okay, great. But I didn't know how to do that. So I reached out to John Acuff. John Acuff then introduced me to another mutual friend of ours, Jeff Goins, who you know. And Jeff, and I was in the middle of this kind of course launch that I didn't know what I was doing. I'd launched it at the beginning of the year and it went fine, but I didn't want to do fine again. And there were some real challenges within the framework of my copy that Jeff is wont to do, hopped on my page and was, as in your words, we'll say brutally compassionate with me and said my copy sucks. I'm like, okay, well, great. I appreciate that. Well, he then told me to read your book, right? And I'm like, okay, Jeff, I don't have time to read Ray's book. So I'm just going to try and follow the guidelines here and figure out tell me what he says. And then so I kind of figured it out. And then Jeff would ask me a few questions here and there. And then finally we got to a point in our conversation where I'd been bothering him for a few days. He was like, look, you probably need to hire a copywriter. And I said, okay, well, who do you recommend? Well, obviously he recommends you. You two literally wrote the book on it. And I said, okay, well, what's that going to cost me? And he said, it's going to be a lot. I'm like, awesome. And it wasn't nearly as bad as I anticipated, which is good.
Wait. You mean I could have charged you more?
I mean, potentially, but I'm already contracted. So
I know.
No. And frankly, it would have been worth more because of the success we had. But the copy that I had was very soft. And I think it would have done okay. It would have gotten the point across. But from the very onset of, kind of starting working with you, I felt really understood by your team. And that came through for me when I saw the copy come up. So when I got my first set, even when I sent it to the guy who was helping me before with my website, he's like, dude, this sounds like you. And it does very much sound like me. I've never seen a company that could capture my voice in that way. It was really clear that you had done the research and you'd watched my videos. You figured out my cadence. You know how I talk. And those things came through in that copy. It was like this brutal, like kick you in the teeth, but like nicely copy. So it's, it's like my videos. It's like, your life up. Hope this helps. That's what we got out of
luck.
Right. That's best of luck to you. That's what we got out of that copy. And it was really exciting. It was really fun. And, so much so that I've now, asked your team to recreate my entire sales funnel, like everything from top to bottom. You're basically redesigning the back end structure of my business, including customer facing side, because I don't know what I'm doing. There's a point where in business where you realize that leverage is more important than money. And that's where I was at. It's like, how much time would it take me to figure out how to do this on my own? I would have still been writing the first page of copy, right? Like now, and I would have launched already and I would have been pissed off. And then like, that would have been a problem. And then I would have had to go through all that. Whereas it saved me, just the copy crew portion saved me probably $50,000 in time and effort. And in, the amount of brain damage I would have caused myself and my girlfriend, Christ, she probably would have left me because I'm a psycho, right? Like I'm nuts. I want it to be right. And I want it to do well. And when it doesn't, I get crazy about it because I'm a perfectionist and that's who I am. And so I outsourced it to you guys. And lo and behold, I've got sales copy that I know, like it's not even, I don't know that we can tweak it. I'm sure that you will. Like when you see the numbers and the metrics, I'm sure there's tweaks we can make to make it more appealing. But realistically, I don't know that there's much we have to do in terms of that initial launch. Like I think I can just plug and play that again.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that.
And it will do better next time. Do what?
Perfectionist here.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, do you mind if we dig into metrics a little bit? Like, can we talk about the fact that, I'll just say in general terms, you came to me with a kind of a smallish list. You were concerned about, will this work? Can we even do this?
Sure.
Then you told me about the engagement with your list. This is what I want to underline for people, especially people who are starting out. If you think you got a small list, don't worry about the size of your list. Worry about the depth of your relationship with your list. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I didn't know what I had when I started talking to you guys. So that's one of the funny things. It's like when I told you, I said, I think I had 11,000 people on my list. We burned up about 1,000 of those in the launch, which is fine. I've since added them back, or added different people back, I assume. But my list engagement is apparently higher than 90% of the people out there. I mean, I have a 50% open rate, which is crazy. I did the numbers. I looked at them like, whoa, okay, apparently that's a thing. And that maintained across. So the other thing that was interesting about your launch is that maintained the same across the launch. And I only lost about 9% of my total list, but I never marketed anything to them ever.
Yeah. And so some of them just weren't into that.
Right. Like on the final day, I also added some emails and blew it up. So we lost about 200 people that day. And I was like,
good man.
Yeah. Out you go.
That's how you do it.
And, and that means that our list is getting cleaner. We have, more people on there that want to hear from me and purchase things that I have to say.
I have to stop you and emphasize this. People don't understand this. People get afraid. They start getting the unsubscribes. They start getting the flames from people saying, you sold out to the man. You're just another one of them marketers. Mm-hmm. Those are not your people.
No.
Here's the thing about you, and I think why your launch worked so well, is your engagement was high with your list. And then, yes, you brought in people to help you with your copywriting. But we did understand your voice. We love your vibe. And we're like, this is going to be fun. I think the reason it worked so well is because they kept hearing your voice coming through all the way through the launch.
Yeah, it didn't sound, I think you're right about that. It didn't sound to me like cheesy, schleppy sales copy.
Yep.
Like, are you tired of feeling like a people pleaser? That's not what we did. And what really worked was telling the true story and being authentic to who I am in terms of a coach in person. And I don't know that there's another company out there that could have captured it.
Well, I thank you for that. I want to point out that the reason you had the engagement with your list to begin with is because that's what you were doing from the start. You're being honest and you're being yourself. Talk about how you built that list. How did you build this? When you first started blowing up on TikTok, did you go hire a TikTok guru, or how did that happen?
So I did hire a TikTok guru, interestingly enough, but he wasn't. So I hired a guy named Coach Stone Frederickson, he's a talented young man. I think he's 20 now. He was 18 when I hired him. And
he was middle-aged in TikTok years.
Right, I know, right? I couldn't get my TikTok following to grow in a way that I felt more comfortable with. So what happened was I had gotten to this place where I was like, okay, well, I need a little help. And this guy was relatively cheap when I hired him. So I booked an appointment and he got on there and he just kind of did a dissection of like, what's wrong with your right? And what we found was that I was doing it wrong. So, and that was the first time I'd hired somebody who was like, okay, your videos need to be filmed straight up and down, not sideways. And you need to put captions in there because nobody gives you what you have to say unless they know what you're saying. And then, it's just like little things that I did. And I did that. So, and then his next piece of advice, and a piece of advice I give a lot of people that come to me now about content creation is, how do I grow? And the answer to that is quality comes after quantity. You have to do so many repetitions to get good at this. So I didn't have a viral video. I hired Stone on September 1. I made 3 videos a day until December 1. 3 to 5 videos a day for 3 months. So we're talking about, north of 900 videos, give or take.
Dang.
Then it hit once, not over and over again, once. And then I had to go back and look at, okay, well, how did I do that? Right. And I have that video somewhere. I could send it to you, but it was basically, I'd done my kind of normal schleppy, not sales pitch, but like my normal real cost to people pleasing vibe. And then I stopped and said, unless of course, so I kind of put a punch in the face at the very end and it made people laugh. Right. So at that point, I kind of learned to engage with the humor of my audience. Then through, more repetitions over time, I kind of learned to engage in their pain. And then I kind of learned to engage in their joy. And then I kind of learned to engage in what they want to feel. And then, so you just kind of do it through repetitions over time. And the amount of times I get asked now, like, can you help me with my social media following? No, I cannot. That's not my game. I won't launch a course. I won't do it. I'm saying it right now. That is not what's happening. If you need copywriters, hire REI. I'm not doing any of it. I didn't even really have a lead magnet on my system until February. So
wow.
As of February 1, I had a list of 1,500 people. I now have a list of, I haven't looked, but I know it's 11,000 plus.
Okay.
Right?
So how did you explain how you built that list so quickly?
Part of it was luck, admittedly. So I got very lucky in that I had a video go viral. So, but this is also interesting is I had 1,500 on my list in February and I had 1,500 Instagram subscribers in February. And I now have 360,000 Instagram subscribers. And that's relatively recent, by the way. So, I mean, that happened. So that was March 9th. I dropped a video and it just blew up on me. And I had started repurposing my content from TikTok over to IG. And so I have a software I use called repurpose.io. It dumps it all into a Google Drive. And then I go and I plug it in and I schedule all this content, right? Well, I'd scheduled all this stuff and one just went crazy. And so I woke up one morning and I went through and I'm like, oh, I have 10,000 followers. Oh, next day I was like, oh, I have 50,000 followers. Oh, and it just kept doing that until it got to like 150. And now it's, I think, I just went viral again. So like I'm at 340 or 350 today. And then my TikTok hadn't grown in months. And I went from 202 to I think 245. And then my Instagram went from 70 to 110. Or not my Instagram, my Facebook. And if you don't know that Facebook is really hard to grow.
Yes.
It just exploded on me.
So what is it about your content you think is doing that? It's causing that to happen.
I think I just talk about me. I'm not trying to, I get in my head sometimes about trying to be profound. And the content that generally does the best for me is when I'm just being me, when I'm just real about what's happening for me and what's important to me, then I tend to make really good stuff.
Yes.
And, I think that's also part of why my newsletter is not consistent, which is funny. Like I only write it when I have something to say. And so I don't sit down and force myself to belch out some on a Tuesday. Like,
yeah.
I just, when something's hurting or something feels right or when whatever, like when I have an emotion that causes me to think, oh, that'd be a great thing to share. That's when I do it. So I think that's part of why my engagement's so high is that I only talk about what I have to talk about. Like I won't blow them up with just to do it once a week.
Profound wisdom right there. Thanks.
Like they don't need me to sit down and crank out something that doesn't make sense for them.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't need to try out my book copy on them.
Yep.
I'm trying to, in that audience, I want to provide value. And if I don't have anything that I feel is truly valuable, I just won't send anything.
Yeah. And this is what people don't get, I think, Nick. A lot of people are trying to like game the algorithm or figure out how to push the magic buttons behind the scenes. It's not that. And especially when you're building a personal brand, you are the brand. And so you got to be you, because everybody else is taken, first of all. And secondly, you're not nearly as good at being somebody else as you think you are. We can all smell a fake.
Right. There's a TikTok creator that's like that for me. I know him through a friend, and I know his material, and it's like this kind of gamey, campy nonsense that it feels like a knockoff of, like, if you took Gary Vee and Alex Hormozy, you put them together, you'd create this kid, but it's not good. It's like he's just regurgitating what's said. I think the other thing that I do that maybe now is different is, even though I still pressure myself to get content out, like I do that, I'm actually really bad at that. Like, it's not a thing I'm proud of, is how hard I push myself to get out content. But usually, like, if I'm having a day where I really don't have anything to say, I walk and do all that, I'll go take a walk and just let the walk be about me. And if something comes up, then I'll do it. So that's kind of one of the things that I've noticed, kind of as in my progression, is that, like, I have highly emotional content. It's really charged emotion. It's that I've done, like, blood, sweat, and tears of my life has gone into this. Yeah. And that was what that's part of why it was so important to hire somebody that could communicate that in my sales copy too. Was this workshop, not the workshop, but the course itself was built on my back. It was built on everything I've been through. And it was painful, and it sucked. And I've had to heal from a lot of shit. I had a really awful childhood, and all the sob stories I can tell you are there, and the alcoholism and the cocaine addiction. And like, I've got it. Right. But what mattered is how I healed it. And if I don't have something specific that's in my heart to say, then I'm just another. And on the days that I do feel that way, that I'm just going to regurgitate, I just do regurgitate. In that, I go back to some of my old stuff and just repost it, right? Or I'll rework an old piece that could have done better with my voice.
Yeah.
The challenge now is, like, so initially your quantity, right? And quantity is king initially. That's how you build, right? Now I'm at the quality section where I have to kind of I have to refine my message without changing my feel, right? So I have to boil down some of this, kind of core blocking and tackling into a consistent, message. And that's part of, what I'm struggling with in the book. And that's part of, what I was struggling with my copy, is like, how do I entertain those two audiences and do this well? And I realized I couldn't do that in a timeline that was going to be fashionable for me, like that I would enjoy. Like, if I spend the next 3 years learning how to write sales copy, I'm still not going to be as good as you are at it, because it's just how it works. Like, you're already 10 or 15 years ahead of me in writing sales copy. Like, there's no chance I'm getting there. I might get proficient, but I won't get great. And I would rather have great fast than efficient over a 3-year.
That's so good. It demonstrates a high level of self-awareness, which is not surprising. Let's talk about the launch for a little minute or two. I want to talk about what you were expecting going in and how things turned out. And
well, admittedly, I think in our first conversation, I asked you if you could cover yourself. If, like, I told you the numbers on my list, and I was like, can you at least recuperate my investment in you? And the answer was, I think so. Like, you felt pretty confident. You're like, I'd say 90% I'm confident that we can do that. That wasn't a high level of sales volume. I think we needed 20. And I felt confident about that. I felt like, okay, look, at 20 sales, whatever, like, we should be able to fall into that on a 10,000 person list, right? With at least reasonable copy. So I kind of felt like you made it, so I didn't have much to lose. Well, we did 5 times that. So we did so much more than that I was able to cover not only the sales copy, but your team to redesign my entire sales process, right? And pay for it up front, just to do it. And that number's so much higher. Like, if you're listening, the number's so much higher, but it was totally worth it. And now I know, like, so come January 1, when I go to launch again, I will have a virality built platform that is designed to draw people to the lead magnet, which means my list will grow at quadruple rate. So I'll go from 10,000 to 40,000 to 50,000 to 100,000. My goal next year is to get to 100,000 people on that list before we publish the book. right?
Yeah.
I have a 100,000 person list. That means I will sell something to 35,000 of those people at my current engagement and clip. That's a big number.
I love that vision that you have. And the funny thing is, I think you're being relatively conservative in what you're projecting there. And I can't wait until the book launch. It's going to be
10x, if we 10x or 20x or 30x my list, fine, right? If you get me to where I've got 1 million people on that list, Ray, I will be forever in your debt. Right.
Okay. I'll come around to collect.
Right. I'm sure. Yeah. I have no doubt. I mean, by the way, you'll be collecting the whole time anyway. But the point is that I recognized it. One of the things I learned in business is that is the art of leverage. And I'm not a great business owner. That's not my gift. Like, I know what I'm good at. I'm good at this. I'm good at talking. I'm good at being, I'm great at coaching. Like it's great, not good at coaching. Like that's an incredible skill set that I have. I'm apparently good on camera.
Yes, you are
apparently good behind a microphone. So like I have some core competencies that I was unaware of that I guess maybe I've developed. But one of the things I learned in business early was like, if you're not good at it, you're probably not going to get good at it. Right.
That's good.
And like, that's a really valuable tool is like to say, am I ever going to be good at this? That's what I asked myself about copy. I heard you was like, am I ever going to be good at this? And if so, what is the timeline? And I looked at the timeline. I'm like, okay, so first I got to read the book. Then I got to get in his masterclass. Then I've got to go to the masterclass. Then I have to write all this crap. Then I have to do we're talking about a year or two of purely learning, which would have been great. I'm sure I would have just thrived in your class, but it would have cost me 2 years of my life and 5 product launches.
Right.
Which is north of 200K.
Exactly.
Why in the hell would I do that to myself? I
think that's a great question. And it's unusual. Many business people won't ask themselves these questions. They won't look at things that clearly. I want to rewind just a little bit and talk about what the class is that we were selling. It's just the core of what you do. So I'd like to shift gears and talk a little bit about what you're doing in that class, what you're helping people with. Explain the people pleaser. I know it seems like everybody should know this, but explain people pleasing versus people displeasing and boundaries and where all that.
Well, what had happened, so I realized throughout this people pleasing journey that really there's kind of 2 core competencies that are kind of misaligned within the people pleaser set. One of those is honesty. People pleasers have a tendency to be completely dishonest all the time. And then we have something completely dishonest is probably a strong word. They like to say that they're mostly honest people. Well, if you're mostly honest, that means you're still dishonest, just as a side note. And then second to that is boundaries. Well, boundaries and honesty are core together. So creating a work around that and saying, okay, well, what did I have to learn to do as somebody that wanted to be dogmatically honest? Like, I will not tolerate. So one of my boundaries is I do not tolerate dishonesty in any form, period. Full stop. Right. That's what a boundary sounds like, by the way, is that I do not. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Right. So when somebody is then dishonest, I have to decide what level of pushback I have to give, or if I'm going to exit the situation or somebody's life in many regard. Right. So it's kind of how that boils down to. But what I built this boundary boot camp around was the ideas of honesty and pushing the boundaries of what it meant to be alive. Because so many of these people pleasing types get into this headspace where they can't have conflict because they don't have any confidence. They can't do this thing or that thing because they'll be afraid, right? So I designed this boundary boot camp as an experiential workshop that if I was to do it in person, which that's coming soon to theaters near you, but if we were to do it in person, it would be even more powerful. But in this way, it's been really funny to watch because the people that are participating get sent on exercises every week. So unlike your normal learning coursework where you get in and this schmuck talks to you for, an hour and then you journal about it and then you go on with your day, the course is actually built that you have to go do a thing every week. And the first 3 weeks were designed to scare you, essentially, and to give you confidence throughout that 3-week timeline. So they scare you in the first week with an exercise, and they scare you with another exercise, and they scare you with another exercise, or just get you uncomfortable, right? You're doing new stuff. One of them was, I'll just kind of spill the beans on it. One of them was I had them dress up in Halloween costumes and take themselves out to dinner alone.
Okay.
Well, why, Nick, would you do that to somebody? Well, think about it. You are exposing yourself to ridicule. You are exposing yourself to being judged. You're exposing yourself to other people's opinions, right? But what most people found was nobody gave it. In fact, most people thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Right. So we also learned a lesson in that. Like most people don't care. And if they do, they're generally going to be nice anyway. Right.
Yep.
So it takes the threat out of people and it took the sting out of it for a lot of people. So you do that. Then we have an exercise this week around having a painful conversation or a confrontational conversation. There will be another next week and another next week and another next week. Right. So the reason I built it that way is because I've taken so many of these awful master classes where I'm just watching some jagoff on a computer screen tell me what to do. Then I have nothing to do. There's no real meat to it. Right. And change happens through experience. It doesn't happen through learning, right?
Hello.
Information.
I love that.
Information doesn't change you. Experience changes you. So what you do with the information and the implementation is how that works. So I built this class around that core, this whole course has been built around those exercises, and they're surprised every week when they do them, right? People are like, why am I doing this? Well, here's why, right? And at the end, my hope is that we've changed some lives and some people are real happy. I know that we've already done that. I've heard amazing feedback from these people. They're having so much fun having these challenges that really push the boundary, right? Really push the limits of what they think they're capable of. I've had a lot of people quit. I've given away a few refunds. Thank God.
Just too much for them.
I had one person quit on the first week. They said that this didn't feel like a safe space and that it was, it needed to be, what did they say, more tolerant or inclusive. And inclusivity, tolerance, safe space. I'm like, okay, well, woke, fine, goodbye. You need to go away. Wonk, wonk, wonk. It's fine. I'm not for you, right? So I like to think of the course as very much like aspirin. It works for a lot of people, but some it doesn't.
Yeah.
And if it's somebody that it works for, if it's somebody that truly wants to do the work, they'll get a hell of a lot out of it. And that's what I'm seeing pretty consistently over this time.
One of the most powerful things anybody ever told me was one of my mentors said, Ray, your level of success in life, however you define that, is going to depend on how much discomfort you can comfortably tolerate.
Right.
And so I think that's what you're doing in those exercises. I mean, you know this very well, but there's a feeling, I feel like there's a lot of people who have this idea that the world is responsible for not saying or doing anything that'll hurt their feelings.
Right.
How do you operate in life if that's your first presumption?
Poorly. The answer to that is poorly. I hate to be that brutal, but it's true. I was that person. I really was that person that I thought that life had been unfair to me. And realistically, Ray, it had been.
Yeah.
And so what?
Let's dig into that a little bit, because you were sharing some of the parts of your story earlier.
Sure.
There's many hard things that have happened to you.
Yeah.
And we have somewhat similar backgrounds, not 100%, but pretty close. How did you come through that? And you're in a place now that I sense not an ounce of you seems like a victim or somebody who's holding on to a past hurt to excuse current behavior. How did you get to this place?
I think the best answer to that, the first thing I did was got sober. And I'm not still sober by the definition of sobriety, in that I still allow myself to have a glass of wine these days. But after a year and a half of not doing that, I felt pretty comfortable that I had taken back my life.
Yeah.
And do I have some wine from time to time? Sure. Do I do that a lot? Absolutely not. For a variety of reasons. One, I enjoy being physically healthy. Number two, it generally throws me off my game for a day. There's a lot of reasons I don't. And the reasons that I don't outnumber the reasons too, right? But mostly what had happened was I spent 9 years at the bottom of a bottle. And there was I just remember one day I woke up and said, I can't be this person anymore. And I was sitting at a bar, and I think I've told you the story, but I was sitting at a bar. It was April 16th of 2018. It was Tuesday. It was a Tuesday at 11 in the morning. I was drunk. I'd already had 3 doubles by that point. I'd gotten there at 9 a.m. so I could start drinking when the doors opened. I had already had 3 doubles that day. I'd smoked a half a pack of cigarettes, and I sat down at the bar stool and I looked at everything, and nothing felt familiar and nothing felt like home anymore. And something inside of me changed. And I said, yeah, this has got to stop. If I'm going to keep living, I need to, if I'm going to keep living, this is not how I want to do it. Right. I was living to die. And I called my mom and said, I need you to come get me. And I need you to I need you to put me in a detox center tonight. I need you to put me in a rehab center next week. Let's go. And that's how I did it. And then I bounced off the sobriety walls for about 2 years. I couldn't quite get my hands wrapped around it. And then in 2021, I sobered up again on January 11th. And I stayed that way for 18 months. And then I had a couple of drinks and I was like, oh, okay, we're fine. And then it hasn't been a problem since. But the work that I was able to do in 12 months of clarity is why I've been able to fix this in a more permanent way and to really take back my own voice, which is like, I'm not going to let my dad's behavior be my identity. That I'm not going to let the people who hurt me when I was a kid be my identity. I'm not going to let I'm not going to let alcoholic be my identity. I'm not going to let addict be my identity. My identity is Nick Pollard. I am who I am. And there's really no definition of that. And there never needs to be.
Yes. Who is this course right for? If somebody's listening, they're thinking, maybe I should check this out. Who's this going to work for?
Well, the self-identified people pleaser is probably a good start. But the course is probably, I'd say if you're kind of on the fence, the things you want to look for are, do you know what boundaries are? And if you think you know and you have to Google it, then you don't know. So there's kind of number one. Number two, people that feel like they are constantly getting doormatted by people. If the things that come out of your mouth are things like, I give everything and nobody ever cares about me, this is for you. It's for you if you experienced childhood trauma in with a capital T, and it's caused you to live your life feeling like you're in somebody else's dreams. That's one of the things I always felt like. I never felt like I was living my own life. I always felt that I was kind of living everybody else's dreams and everybody else's visions of what I was supposed to be, not who I wanted to actually be. If you always feel like you're the youngest person in the room, it's another good indicator. Like if you always feel like you're less than or you're younger than everyone else, even when you're either older or you're at the same level. Those are some core indicators. But honestly, I think people who don't have boundaries know it. If you've seen me on TikTok, or you've seen me on Instagram, or you've seen me on Facebook, then you probably are the right person because those algorithms know you better than you do.
Truth. Because I have a friend who was going to show me something on his phone one day, and he's flipping through TikTok, and he's like, I don't know why it keeps showing me all these women. And I'm like, well, I do. Let me explain it to you?
Because you keep looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a big one. Like if it shows up for you enough, the algorithm's interesting, I would say. In the parlance of religion, it's kind of fascinating in that it'll show you exactly what you need to hear very often. And very much like the antithesis or the antithetical God creature, whatever that happens to be in your life, it will also show you everything you shouldn't be looking at that makes you happy.
Boom.
So like take the bad with the good.
That's a mic drop moment right there, brother.
Well, thank you.
All right. So we'll put the link in wherever you're watching or listening to this content. We'll have a link to Nick's site. It's nickpollard.com. And it's a fantastic website. You should definitely read all the copy on that website.
Yeah. And read every last word. That design brought to you by the REI's team as well, as soon as it launches. I don't know when our launch date is. I think it's in a couple of weeks here. But
I got to tell you, brother, I love the work you're doing. I love the way you're speaking the truth. I know it's not maybe everybody's style or cup of tea, but I like it because I like people just tell me where they're coming from and why. And I love that. And obviously a lot of other people love it too.
Sure.
Because you're doing very well.
It keeps doing the thing. I love the question, like, how did you do it? No idea.
I love that answer.
Right. Not one fucking.
Because it tells me you're doing what you must do. And
right.
So often people don't do what they must do. They do what they think they're supposed to do. And that's a recipe for misery.
Yeah. I lived that misery for many years and now I don't. I've got a very successful business. I've got a great team behind me. I've got support staff. I've got the right kind of key elements in place to scale. And, you guys have been a big part of that. So I've been really grateful to, I'm grateful to Jeff for the making introduction. But more than that, I'm really grateful to you for, kind of overseeing this thing and helping me get this launched in a way that was meaningful. And Joe and Camilla and all the people that have worked on this have been amazing. And there's nothing about it I don't love. So
I love hearing that. Well, this, I think, is just the beginning. I'm excited to see where things are going with you and your business and the folks you're helping.
Me too.
And thanks for working with me to make this conversation happen, Nick.
My pleasure, buddy. Thank you for having me.